When people think survival horror, they typically think Resident Evil. It's that simple. While Alone in the Dark is credited as being the very first 3D survival horror game, Sweet Home was released 3 full years earlier in December of 1989. Many people, myself included, often make the mistake of saying that Shinji Mikami, the original creator of Resident Evil, worked on Sweet Home, or that it was his idea. But the truth is, he started at Capcom in 1990 and had absolutely nothing to do with Sweet Home. The relationship between Mikami-san and Sweet Home is that when he was creating Resident Evil, he used many of the same elements from Sweet Home. At one point, Resident Evil was actually supposed to be a 3D remake of Sweet Home. Many consider Sweet Home the precursor to the Resident Evil series, and rightfully so, as you're about to learn. To begin with, we need to discuss Sweet Home in greater detail. The game was originally a licensed movie property. That's right, it's based on a Japanese horror movie of the same name. The movie's director, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, supervised the development of the game to ensure it would feel as close as possible to the movie. Now, I watched the movie for this review, and well, it's a B movie, and I found it didn't really hold up nearly as well as the game did. I should also mention this is a Japanese exclusive, and has never been officially released outside Japan, so if you're interested in checking this out, the only way to do so is either via emulation or a fan-translated ROM hack reproduction cart, whatever works for you. So what is Sweet Home about? Well, it's about a group of 5 investigators who are on a mission to chronicle a series of precious frescoes painted within a giant mansion. Ichiro Mamiya painted the frescoes some 30 years prior to the onset of the game and was never heard of again or seen again. Apparently the paintings are still in his dilapidated mansion. Upon entering the mansion, the entrance crumbles, preventing you from leaving, and a ghost appears telling you that you're never going to make it out alive. Your mission is quite simple: to survive. As you progress deeper in the mansion, you'll start to discover notes with clues as to what exactly happened in this mansion some 30 years ago. And needless to say, the info is quite disturbing. The gameplay is rather unique. This is a traditional turn-based RPG with random encounters. There are a total of 5 party members, however you can only pair 3 of them together at a time, well, at most. Each member has 2 item inventory slots, 1 weapon slot, and a unique item. One character might be carrying, say, the skull key, another the camera, maybe a vacuum, and so on. By pairing together 3 people, you make sure you always have at least a couple of items on hand that you'll need. One important note to make here is that the game supports permanent death, meaning if one character should fall in battle, there's no way to get them back. Now, I should also mention that you don't need to make groups of 3. You could basically have 5 groups of 1, or you could have 1 group with 3, 1 group of 2, etc. And that's typically the way I play. Anyways, what happens when one of your characters dies is that you're forced to carry their unique weapon. You can find basically another unique weapon like the one they were carrying, but that takes up an inventory slot, and like I said, you have such limited inventory slots to begin with, and you're also going to lose those 2 standard inventory slots that character would have had. Inventory management is probably the single most important aspect of the entire game, so you really don't want anyone to die, because it can literally throw off your entire game. To give you an idea, the only way to heal in this game is to find the special tunics, of which there are only 21 in the entire game. So you really have to play carefully. The other big gameplay factor is that of puzzles, and this is where the team's importance comes into play. Let's say you stumble onto a room that has an obstacle blocking your path. You simply have to select the right character to overcome said obstacle via their special unique item. It sounds pretty simple, right? Well, eventually it gets a lot deeper. You may have to locate the right item, you may have to pray, which is part of the gameplay mechanic here. Think of it sort of like magic, if you will. It's something like that, although not entirely. But the interesting thing is, with prayers, is they level up with you, and that's how they prevent you from progressing too far in the game, because if you do require to pray, if you have to pray to whatever overcome some obstacle, and you don't have enough prey points, well, bingo, you're going to have to level up in order to progress to the next area. And this ensures that you're always sort of ready for that next area. So don't expect this to be like Dragon Quest, although it can at times, where in other words you stumble onto the wrong area and boom, you're pretty much instantly one-shotted. Now there is some good news here, guys. You can save whenever you want, so make sure you do that all the damn time. Now speaking of the combat system, which I haven't done yet, it's typical 1980s RPG fare. So basically think Dragon Quest. You can attack using standard weapons, items, and what have you. What's unique here is that everyone in your party will gain experience. Remember what I said though, you can only have 3 active party members at any given time. So what does that mean to your second party? Well, that's right, they get no experience. However, there's a cool gameplay twist you can do though, using what's called the call command. And this is basically how you can pull in your second party into the first party, so you can have all 5 characters taking on every single enemy. And what's great about this is that you share the experience, so everybody has a chance to gain experience and level up together. And it's extremely important you do this, especially towards the end of the game, where enemies are worth a lot of experience. You have about 30 seconds once you use the call command for your second party to reach your first party. If you don't do it, well, then it's just that single party up against the enemy. But it is absolutely crucial that you guys use this gameplay mechanic to your advantage, because it really increases your odds of making it out alive. The game isn't stupid though, and it knows that you're pairing up. So what it does is it tries to separate you as often as possible. There's actually things in the environment, or enemies, or whatever you want to call them, that will grab hold of one of your characters and pull them to a different location of the mansion. And depending on where that is, that could mean instant death for that character. So you really have to be very careful how you play. There are many classic RPG tropes that do take some getting used to though. For example, if you want to look at something, you need to use the look command. Want to talk to someone? You guessed it, you have to select the talk command. If you want to pick up an item, well, this is really cumbersome. You need to go into the inventory screen, the item command, then select an empty spot, and then select move. It's extremely cumbersome to be sure, but after a short while you do get used to it. Naturally, this is the one area that hasn't aged all that well at all, but the good news is, like I said before, you can save at any time and you're going to want to do so, and it really isn't that bad because it's not overly complex of a game. The audio-video package is very impressive for a late NES game. While some would say the game looks and sounds like a standard NES game, I would argue that it definitely is above average. There are great use of shadows, portraits are detailed, and enemies have slight animations. The soundtrack is also extremely memorable, especially the battle tunes. I really enjoyed those. Now, something I need to mention, because I know there are those out there that are curious, is how scary is this game really? Well, to be honest with you, it never scared me in the least, unlike Clock Tower, which genuinely made me feel uneasy. Here was more of a fear of dying than anything else, much like how I feel when I play the classic Fire Emblem games. There's a sense of tension because you know you might lose one of your group at a moment's notice. However, the save feature sort of alleviates that if you use it properly. If I had played this as a child, things would most likely have been quite different, but alas, I was already an adult when I first played the game, and I never really found it scary. I also want to mention before the review is out that there are 5 unique endings in the game, depending on how many characters you get to the finish line. It's clear that Resident Evil was heavily inspired by Sweet Home. Just look at the inventory management system, the focus on survival, the limited supplies, the scattered notes throughout the mansion setting itself, and hell, even the opening door loading screens were all taken from Sweet Home. It's incredible how close the two are related, and it's so interesting to play through what I consider to be a history lesson. What you might not know is there's actually a scene in Sweet Home where one of the damned victims actually wrote in their own blood the House of Residing Evil. Now, talk about foreshadowing, no? If you enjoy the Resident Evil series and can put up with a few traditional RPG tropes, I highly recommend you give Sweet Home a chance. It's one of the most unique NES games ever made, and you won't believe how you start to dread each battle because you know one slip up could very well be your last.